Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of Lumia.
And we're super passionate about all things coaching, and we want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training thousands of life coaches.
Let's dive into the science and magic of coaching.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about soft skills, the soft skills that everyone needs to be successful in today's marketplace. Instead of starting with what soft skills are, what would you say are hard skills?
Oh, man.
Or is there such a thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, and the other word I wanted to tackle in the introduction is like, what is today's marketplace?
Right. Scattered.
It's so scattered, right?
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, I think that the hard skills, we have to look at society, the way that we were raised, thinking back to school, the educational system of like, what were we taught were our measures of success as a human. And it was our report cards.
Yeah. Grades.
Right?
What college you went to, your resume, right? Those are hard. Got it.
Hard skills.
Or are those proof of hard skills?
I think they're proof of hard skills. And then the hard skills themselves would be like, what do you know how to do in order to make money? Like, what are the things that you know how to do that are like technical?
Yeah, I almost feel like when I think of hard skills, it's kind of sad that I'm relating it to tech, but I think about hard drives. I think about like the information, the hard drive, your system, that kind of foundation. And we used to equate that with education, what you can do, all of that, performance. And now when you say soft skills, now I think about what is human about you? What is unique about you? What makes you different than, something that AI can't replicate? Absolutely.
And let's bring this into a space that you know really well, like fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is a trainer or a CrossFit coach, their hard skills would be their knowledge of fitness, their technical knowledge around how to use equipment, exercise, movements,
programming,
mobility, programming, 100%. And then that human, if they took that skill set and it existed in a vacuum, they wouldn't be able to do too much with it. So, what are the soft skills that would surround that person in terms of actually being able to be successful?
The soft skills would be how they uniquely take that data and execute, the charisma they have, the way they go into exercise that may be different, their brand, how they run their classes.
Yeah.
Soft skills may also be the energy of the room. It may be also the kind of music they play. So I think a lot of kind of who they are, not what they can do.
Absolutely. And on a really fundamental level, I think that the most important soft skill would be how they communicate with a client, how they instill trust, how they facilitate safety, psychological safety, and all of the different factors that go into an environment where somebody wants to keep coming back and being around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the fundamental point that we're getting at is what does it mean for us in our time when we are able to understand ourselves and our reality in a way that we can be around other people successfully?
Do you think that people are more thirsty for soft skills now more than ever, just because of technology and all the things that are, being created? Or do you think soft skills are something that's going to be of D value?
What we're seeing in the marketplace is that soft skills are really being sought after, and it's a huge conversation around what soft skills are, why they're important, and how we get them. And one of the reasons I mean, it has to be an if-then sequence. If this is true, then how did we get here? And if we're looking at the last 5-6 years, I mean, let's go 7 years. We had pre-pandemic, pandemic, and then are we post-pandemic? Really? Like, what's still going? I think I have COVID right now, actually. So, like, what's going on here?
I just had it.
You just had it? Okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So glad it's over.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, we're here in this space, and we knew leading up to the pandemic that tech adoption, dopamine addiction, the way that technology turned society into this like digital soundbite performance art was really fucking with people, like really screwing up our sense of self, who we are, and got in the way of people being able to communicate and interact with each other. And then we had the years of the pandemic where we're just beginning to address and understand as a society how screwed up we all got from that experience of detachment. And some people have had a really hard time moving back into spaces where they're expected to integrate with other humans, experience conflict, express themselves. And now, this backlash, this blowback is kind of saying, whoa, like we're not okay. And that's why this is all coming to the fore right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it. Thank you for painting that picture. It makes sense.
Welcome.
Yeah, I feel it as well.
Welcome to the existential dread of today's podcast, right? Like,
I also feel like so I just had 2 meetings. One today at 6:30 a.m. because they're in London with AI companies, and man, the rate or the speed at how many AI startups are emerging, or S&M or other kind of tech companies that are now pivoting and going and doubling down on AI. It's staggering. And what he was talking about was, he said, give me 5 minutes of your voice, and then we're going to duplicate that. And we can then use that as a template to have people, or to have your content, and you saying it that sounds like you, but it's not really you. And I was like, oh my God, this is all happening right now. It's happening so fast. And these are not soft skills.
No.
Right? These are hard skills. Very, very polished, kind of fancy hard skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so then, where does that leave you as a human?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Does it make me more valuable, or I mean, because you're now, like, humans are finally scalable because of, I mean, I guess social media makes you scalable, but the thing about social media is it's a video or it's audio, and it's one way, it's content. But now when you talk about AI, you're talking about an engagement. So now engagement hasn't been scalable until now, if that makes sense with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's take this idea, and I'm gonna throw down 3 examples of soft skills, and then let's get into it. Right. Yeah. So the first one is your ability to establish vision, which AI can't do. How to communicate effectively in your work life and in your personal life with your people who are important to you. And then how to relate to people who think differently from you and understand them, understand their perspective. And this is both in your work life and in your home and everyday life. So, all right, if we're talking about your capacity to establish vision, why is this important at work? And why is this important at home? And what are some examples of that?
It's huge. I mean, so yeah. So, I mean, obviously work, where I want to be in 3 years, what I want my life to look like, what I want my practice to look like, all of that stuff. At home also.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Is that what you mean by vision?
It is. And I wanted to go a cut deeper in the expression of it. So when you're taking meetings with people and you're saying this is what my brand is, or at home, even in relationships, in your experience as a relationship human working with thousands of people, how many times have you seen two people who are in a relationship and they both have different ideas?
Oh yeah,
of
all
what
the time. Of
all
course.
the time.
Of course. Of course.
So yeah, how does it work? Like, how does vision function?
Communication. I mean, if you're talking about a relational vision, um, compromise, perhaps, understanding, knowing the differences and a lot of maneuvering, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
A lot of maneuvering and
Nuance.
nuance. And there's also, within being able to articulate vision, there's also, components of leadership development that need to take place. And most people don't consider themselves in need of leadership development. But when you have a vision, whether it's at home or if you're talking to your daughter Logan, like, how are you able to influence? How are you able to influence and say, this is my vision? I want, like, I let's play with Legos this way. Like, how
Mm.
are you able to influence the people around you to see and understand and get buy-in for your vision?
To engage with them,
Yeah.
to create that kind of space, to express all of that, to show up. Yeah.
Yep. And that leads us into communicating effectively
Hmm.
because, and I think this is one of the areas where the interplay of AI can actually be helpful in terms of getting support for effective communication.
Hmm.
In terms of, when we're in coaching, and especially if I'm coaching someone through a relationship, I might ask my client, well, what is the message that you want your partner or person that you're dating or friend or colleague to understand? And they'll tell me the message very, very clearly. And then
Hmm.
I say, okay, well, how are you going to say it? And then what
Right.
they
Right.
actually say is like nowhere near
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
message that they want to get across. What's been your experience with this?
Well, what I'm thinking about is when you say, how are you going to say it? Most people just are thinking about the words, but also, their tone.
Mm,
Also, the when are you saying it? Are you saying it, in a time where that message can be absorbed? Or are you saying it, while you're in transition? So, like, when? What's the tone? So it's not just the words; it's kind of like the entire presentation of it.
absolutely. The entire presentation of it. And then, follow up, follow through. And oftentimes with communication, I think that people um, think a lot about how they're expressing, their needs, their meaning. They're often feeling misunderstood, but they're not taking responsibility for the fact that they might not be communicating in a way that's effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, that bleeds right into the third soft skill, which is how to relate to people who think differently than you. And
Mm,
to me, this is like literally everyone else outside of your head.
right. Exactly. Everyone thinks differently than you.
Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone. So, how does this show up for you at work? How do you reconcile the fact that literally everyone is going to think differently than you do?
I think my clinical background helps, and also coaching as well, where you do have to be neutral and you have to create a space, and you're trying to understand your client's story and their positioning instead of trying to get them to do something. And so I think the practice of that, I mean, for me, 20 years has gotten me to, yeah, to definitely um, take in what is in the room, and instead of labeling, judging, or controlling, instead of grabbing it, just kind of holding it and see what emerges.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
then in our personal relationships, in our friend relationships, thinking about something that shows up in both spheres, work and home, which is having shared goals, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
and this can be something as simple as I would like to have, we both want to have an empty dishwasher, right?
Yeah.
How that dishwasher gets emptied is a whole different ball game
Right. Right.
in terms of a shared goal, or a friend group. Like, we want to have a good time tonight. How we get there might be so different, for
Mm,
other people. And then
mm,
at work, same deal. So when we're talking about being able to understand and relate to others, one of the pieces is moving everybody along to this positionality of shared goals.
mm.
Um, what have you learned about difference and how people's diverse backgrounds really influence the way that they see the world?
Yeah, I think for me, my early years, 20s, 30s, when I would be in partnership with people or working with people, um, there was a lot of me trying to control. And if it's not this way, then I don't want to be a part of it. A lot of ultimatums,
Mm.
that kind of stuff. And I think, 50s, 60s, I don't know. I think that was very, uh, how a lot of companies were ran. And I think these days, it's more of me saying, okay, or I'm working with these people or I'm partnering with these people. They all have different superpowers, right? So
Mm.
my job is to notice what their superpowers are. I mean, I see now people as Avengers and we're all different, not me trying to dictate a military, like a regime. It's now like, oh, this person can walk through walls. I can't. But then this person can throw cars. And so, like, what is their superpower and how can I create a space for that to shine? And I think if you can do that, the success is going to be exponential.
100%.
Yeah.
Now let's flip that, what you just described around, and how could that, if that was the way we all ran our home lives,
Yeah.
what would that be like?
It's harder at home, I think, because, our relationships are more intertwined, they're more personal, we get hurt faster, like all that.
And we also have such different stories of what home is supposed to be.
Right.
and and
Mhm.
and what we experienced as kids growing up, or even the behaviors that are acceptable or unacceptable. A lot of people have these ideas of like, oh, I can act a certain way in my home life because this is what was modeled for me, so it's safe
Mhm.
here, but I can't do that in the outside world. And so when people come together, in a home life, in an intimate life, and even a close friendship life, I think we really bump up against those things, and taking the time to understand, and not be punitive in terms of like, you really fucked up, but like, wow, your actions really surprised me.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on for you, and like what your life has been like that lets you think that that was okay?
When it comes to coaching, bring it back to coaching, I think that hard skills are necessary just to even start because you're gonna need education and how this thing works and what you're supposed to do. But I think soft skills, because they're so unique to the individual, is going to be what separates you and what makes you successful. So, like,
Yes.
I feel like hard skills, education, what coaching is. Don't give advice. Like all of that, all these different theoretical orientations. That's just primary colors, right? And then now, if you want to create a masterpiece, you got to bust out the crayons where you can't even pronounce the name of the colors, and that's all soft skills.
Oh, yeah. There's
Yeah.
a really interesting statistic that came out of Harvard and the Carnegie Foundation and
Hmm.
Stanford. So this
Hmm.
was really well validated that if we're talking about work life, 15% of your job success comes from technical skills, hard skills, and knowledge.
Mm,
That
mm.
means that 85% of your personal effectiveness as a human in your career comes from having well-developed people skills, well-developed soft
This
skills.
is great news because if you're thinking about being a coach or if you are a coach, most coaches or they're insecure about the hard skills.
Yeah,
And this is us saying that you don't have to be. This is
yeah,
us saying that the hard skills are easy. It's the soft skills which you already have, which are unique to you, which are why your friends keep coming to you for, guidance. Those skills are going to be what really makes you an exceptional coach.
yes.
So don't worry about learning what you're going to learn because that's the easy part. It's really about the soft skills that you develop and how to practice those soft skills with other humans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, when we're breaking it down into, impact outcome, if we're saying, okay, effective communication in like on a billboard, like that is the cornerstone of coaching. That is the cornerstone of what folks are looking for in industry as enterprise organizations are saying we have major problems here. Communications, specifically around vision, goals, and conflict is what's showing up as like what's missing.
Hmm.
So turning the dial and saying, okay, well, we know coach training will get us there. We know that developing soft skills will get us there. What actually happens when we have effective communication is psychological safety and trust,
Hmm.
the ability to recognize that where your power is in deeply listening and then asking questions to really clarify
Hmm.
before moving into a game plan, before
Hmm.
moving into a directive stance, and getting that muscle built of listening to understand. Um,
Hmm.
what would you say to somebody who's new to the party in listening to understand?
It's one of the things that I always say. For me, it's helped me a lot. It's my mantra when I go into arguments or if there's conflict. It's try to understand before trying to be understood.
Mhm.
And I think if you're doing that, then before speaking your opinion or how things should be, you're first trying to understand the person, their story, where they're at in their life, their perspective, and that understanding probably will change your response.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, values and motivations.
Mhm.
Because if we're in a situation where everybody, because it's your job, has to work towards a shared goal, every single person who's on a project or on a team or working together are going to have different values and motivations for why they're there, for why they showed up to work today. And we don't know what's going on in their lives, their home lives. And so taking the time to really plug into, well, who are the people around me as whole people can
Mhm.
give you such a different slice of understanding beyond Johnny didn't do that right.
Right.
you
Right,
know?
right, right. And
How
the when we're talking about this, it doesn't it's not doesn't just stay with coaching and work. It's kind of bleeds into all relationships because it's something we're talking about that's a humanistic value.
it is. And
Yeah,
to kind of close out with the point that we started with, when we titled this piece and said, what everyone needs to be successful in today's marketplace. Well, the lines have blurred. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
in the last couple of years, the idea of personal branding started showing up. Like
yeah.
that's a relatively new concept that people, because of social media, because of the access, because of the lack of privacy that we all unknowingly stumbled into, starting with MySpace, right?
Hmm.
Like our lives are on display, and we have cancel culture,
Hmm.
and we have, like your history follows you wherever you go. You've been in this a lot more directly than I have over the last decade. How
It
do you see it?
it's crazy. So our mutual friend MC and I were having a conversation, and she said to me, "Hey, do you think you're famous?" And I said, "No, of course I'm not famous. I write books at home." And she's like, "Wait, hold on. Do you get approached?" And I said, "Yeah, I now get approached all the time. Coffee shops,
Yeah.
New York, LA, wherever. Even in Idlewild, I got approached, which is shocking up in the woods." And I thought to myself, well, because I grew up in the '80s, fame. My definition of fame was like the movie star, on TV. Tom Cruise was famous, right? And then there was like non-famous people. But what's interesting is if you're Gen Z and you were born with the internet and social media just forever in your life, these kids actually don't really see Tom Cruise. And I mean, yeah, they're famous, but they actually, because they're on their phone so much, the people that they follow on TikTok, those have become who like them up and they're famous to them. And those are the people that they go, approach, and when they see them on the streets, and in their eyes, that's fame. So in my eyes, because I'm older, I still have kind of the old school definition, but even the definition of fame has changed significantly. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so weird just how fast things are changing.
How and how fragmented, the tiers of society have become. Like I've had a lot of clients who roll in corporate spaces, and even within certain organizations, the way identity shows up, and certain people can be rock stars within these environments, and then they step out of that environment or leave that job or leave that company, and poof, their sense of identity is just torpedoed because so much has gone into the cachet, built on the values and promise of like one place. And it's a tricky time.
It is a tricky time. And if you get nothing from this episode, please, as a reminder, hold on to, embrace, and grow your soft skills. That's always going to be a value. It doesn't matter how, hockey stick the tech is, it doesn't matter what's happening around you. Your soft skills they're always going to be, they're actually going to get more and more valuable, I think, as, the tech grows.
Absolutely. And that's why we developed our program the way we did. So, our essentials program, part 1, even if you don't want to become a credentialed coach, that's where you're going to learn these soft skills. That's where you're going to get that hardcore how to human better methodology. And then part 2 is, if you want to, is where you go on to become a credentialed coach. So I love that. At Lumia, we're like humaning well first.
Yes, absolutely. And so if you're interested, come on by.
Yeah, come see us. We're delighted to talk to you.
We'll make you softer.
Yes. All right, everyone. Have an awesome day.
You will.
Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to lumiacoaching.com/everything. Explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a bold community to do it with.
Lumia is ready to equip you with the tools, training, and community you will need to reach your goals. If you're ready to build a unique coaching business on your own terms while making an impact on the world at large, Lumia is the next bold step in your coaching journey. That's lumiacoaching.com/everything.
And hey, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it.